welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going to look at the new highlights in the 2023 R4 release for Sage Intacct. We have a very exciting roadmap for Sage Intacct, and we look forward to sharing with you what's been released and what's coming. I'd like to introduce Hugo, our Solution Architect for Sage Intacct. You may have met Hugo in your discovery process. He will be presenting the key highlights today. Some of those features include advanced ownership consolidations, which is exciting for some of our customers, where you're consolidating with percentages, multiple entities. Another feature we're highlighting today is reconciliation enhancements in the bank reconciliation space, where we can easily identify matched transactions in sequences. Another feature is where we can receive one payment for multiple customers. We can update a supplier invoice that has been submitted for approval. Change general ledger account numbers where you have an account number and you want to change it. It's a great feature that. There's more flexibility in the vendor aging report. They've enhanced inventory fulfillment, which includes managing sales process through pick, pack, ship, invoice, or any combination of those. And they've enhanced the list views, where you go into Sage Intacct and you can view transactions. You've enhanced the features and the visibility on these views. That's just some of the key highlights that we'll be talking about today. So over to you, Hugo.
Yeah, thanks, Des. And yeah, just on that one, I think initially, just a recap on that agenda. That's basically what we'll cover off today, as Des mentioned. So we'll basically jump right in at this point and just have a look at what's new in Intacct. Now, when we get into Intacct, there's a couple of things that I just want to share and highlight. So when we start off with that advanced ownership, that's probably the highlight in a sense. So initially, when we configure that, you'll still go into your normal consolidations, and within the setup, there is a new configuration piece that can be added as well. So when looking at that, you'll see there in my example there, I normally have the global or domestic consolidations active, depending on your sort of structure and number of entities that you've got. But at this point, we've added that advanced allocation or advanced ownership consolidation as well. You can see, it'll add a little picture in there as well. And part of this will also, there'll be some additional user rights that needs to be assigned. All of that will be covered in the release notes. Now, when we think about advanced consolidation in this instance, there's a couple of things that we can set up. So if we look at the normal books, you still have that functionality for all the, I'm going to call it the 100% owned entities. So that feature will still remain. You can still do the consolidation in the same process. But we've then added the ownership structure, which means we can now allocate what that ownership looks like. And part of this, if we go into the structure per period, is we can actually change that, because the ownership doesn't always remain the same. So when it actually changes from period to period, you can update that structure and apply that throughout the consolidation process. So it's not a once-off set and forget. You can physically maintain that. Initially, when we look at that, I'll show you a couple of options there. We'll go into the map view so you can see what it looks like. So we've got a holdings entity, and then you can see below that how that branches out, 75% there, 60% to the trust, 100% to the properties, and 45% there. And then below that, we can have additional structures. So it's not limited to a sort of one level down. You can create that multiple structure approach as well. And that gives you the ability to report on both. So I'll show you a couple of those options once we go into the process. The other thing, as you can see there at the top, this is also allocated by period. So we can decide, and it keeps an order trail, obviously, of when we've got what percentage available, so that when you refer to the consolidation, you know what that ownership was at the particular time. So in my case, I had one beginning of January, and then another, if I look at 2020 and apply that through, you can see that these percentages have changed now. So that's been updated to 70%, 78%, 90%, 75%, and there's also updated to 85%. So throughout the process, or whenever there's changes in the ownership with any of the entities, you can change that as well. Now, when you physically go into the actual setup of that, there's a couple of things to take note of. So firstly, there are consolidation rules that you can apply. And part of this is we can see that, that one entity or one part of the entity actually consolidates into a different currency. And if we look at the second part there on the holding side, that consolidates into Australian. So, multiple, levels that you can consolidate at, and then also still include that multiple currencies if you have more than one currency available. If we look at the parent entities and how this is set up, you can see the initial part there with the holdings. There's 0 parents in there, so that's the main company in a sense. And then it's got 4 subsidiaries with a particular book that we're reporting in. And on the other side, we can see on the MicroChannel, it's got 1 parent, so we know where that's gone. It goes into that holdings, and it's only got 1 subsidiary. From a detail perspective, you can still view that, so you can see what that looks like. So for that period of January 2019, there's 1 child relationship there of 85%. If we look at the other side of things, we can see at that point, again, January 2019, we've got the 4 child entities available, and you can see what they look like as well. So from a setup perspective, that will all be there. And then when you run the consolidation, there's your normal one as you used to have. So we can run the normal consolidation based on your normal books that you might have, but we can also consolidate that structure, and that'll give you the ability to say, which structure you want to run on, what the period range is, and then for those periods we can do the consolidation. So a straightforward way again to try to manage that consolidation. And then the end result of that, really what we want to see is when we get to our reports or dashboards, there's a couple of things that now is added when we do the reporting. So when you look at the initial structure, I'll just edit this report so you can see what becomes available. So if we look at the filters on this one, we can now select our ownership structure, so we can say what that structure is, and then with that we've got those 2 reporting books that we have. So I want to say that top level and then that sub level that I've added in there as well. So for each of those, you can physically go through and do a preview. So if I preview that one, it's just the 2 entities with a total in there. If I physically go back and look at the other one where I change that across, I can run the preview on that one, and then that will include that MicroChannel one in there, plus all the others with its elimination as part of that one. So really giving you an overall view of what can be done. Now, when we bring that onto one dashboard, I've added these 2 at the bottom, so we can see on the right there's that USD with the 2 entities with the roll-up, and then bringing that across with its percentage ownership into the holdings consolidation, you have the ability to show both them on the same screen, essentially just changing those filters and what's available. So real nice feature, bringing those consolidations into play. When we look at our reconciliation and enhancements from a bank perspective, that's sort of the second area that I want to touch on. Now, I think Des mentioned also there's that matching by sequence, so we can add sequence numbers so you can actually see what was matched. But part of what I want to show you today is a new feature where we can assign customers to transactions. So if we get the bank feed coming in, there's transactions that you see, there's cash incoming. We can then assign a customer and also create that receipt automatically. So that's some of the funky things that's coming out as well. Now, looking at that from a setup perspective, the first part there, we've got, I think you're all aware of the rules that were there already, but there's that assignment rules where we can say, what, for a particular description, there's any description from a bank feed that contains hail can now be assigned to a customer AB square in my instance. So that means as soon as we get transactions coming in, we can assign that customer and then also trigger that receipt creation. So if we go in and we look at our bank transactions that's coming in from the feed, you'll see, there's a couple of things. It's still unmatched, but based on, the description that we've got there, Halifax, each one of those will then assign a customer automatically. You do have the facility on screen as well. So if we select something where we say, yep, we want to choose that one, we can also assign that to a customer. With that, it's either doing a manual assignment or we can create a rule on the fly as well. So I can say, change that to uplift. I'll save that. That one didn't go through, but you can physically get done with that one through and then assign customers on the fly. The other part of this is the receive payment. So for those that we receive, so if we sort of sort on that customer, I can select all those and effectively allow, you see there's that uplift that I've done. I can also receive payment, so it can create the receipt on your behalf, so it's automatic transaction, and then you have the ability to then still use the bank recon assistant to say if I want to match that to invoices or I want to match that later on during the process. So a nice way just to sort of round off that bank reconciliation and the process that we've got available now going forward. From a customer perspective, from a receipt perspective, while we're on that one, there's been some enhancements as well as to what we can receive. Now, generally, when we looked at Intacct, you have the option to set up a customer as a single entity, or you've got that parent-child relationship where we might have a head office that pays invoices on behalf of other customers. So with Intacct now, with the new feature, you can now receive money on that parent level and show all the invoices of the child, for instance. Or we can do a receipt across multiple customers. So looking at that in action, if we go into accounts receivable and we look at a new payment that I might want to receive, we have this new feature at the top where we can say, what do we apply this to? Is it one customer? So what do we show? We want to show one customer's AR invoices. I want to show that parent and child customers. So effectively, if I do that, you still select a parent customer there, and it'll show you all the invoices. Or if you want to do this across multiple customers, you've got that ability to do that across multiple of one as well. So as per normal, we select the bank and the currency that we're working in. You can populate, what amount we're receiving, and then if we show the AR invoices now, that will go down and actually show you all the invoices, and you can see there from different customers. So the ability, there's one deposit in your bank, we can then select multiple customers and multiple invoices to apply that to. When we do that apply detail, you can see we can add multiple invoices in there. It's not going to stop you at that amount level. You do have the ability to bring it through and then show you, these are the invoices that you selected, but the amounts that were applied, you can see how they come through. So if there's something that we don't want to do on that one, for instance, we can still come through and say, there was $3,000 there and 2750 on that one, so we can include them, and then the whatever's left, I think it's 950, we can bring that in, not too much, bring that in, and we can still apply that full 15 that we received, so you can see where we are and everything is applied. So the easy way to just allow that detail to be applied, one, to the multiple customers, but also bring through the invoices and apply to the actual detail to mark those invoices as paid. For those of you who use accounts payable and the approval process in there, they've added a new request coming in from some of the customers at this point, where I've submitted an invoice for approval, but there's something that I haven't done, or I still need to add something on there. You need to contact the manager. They need to decline the transaction for it to come back to you. Within the current release, you can now recall that message or that workflow. So effectively, if you, within your accounts payable side as the user, you can look at everything that's submitted, for instance. You can filter on that, and then part of that one, you'll still have the ability to recall this. So if we recall that top one, you'll see it's been successfully recalled, and I can then, it's not in the submitted stage anymore, but it'll come back as a draft document, which I can then edit as if it was still in my inbox. And then once I've done that process, I can resubmit that. So normal process, do whatever we need to do, whatever changes we need to do, and we can submit that back in for approval. So you can see it's back as submitted again. So just an addition there to make sure that who's responsible for the document, they can still update that before it actually gets approved with incorrect details. Now, one of the other things that's quite crucial, I know initially when we start off Intacct, we put quite a bit of emphasis on your chart of accounts and what we put in there, because it's something that doesn't really change or can't really change. with the new feature, they've added the option to change that as well as statistical accounts. So that's quite an interesting one to look at. If you want to activate that, and I think I'll touch on that again at the end, is just looking at all your release notes. You can obviously go through those release notes and see what's required to do these type of things as well. But firstly, on this side, now if we activate the ability to change that, you can see there at the top, they've added right there. We can do our GL account number, and we want to allow changes to the account number, including the length. So it's not just the number change, we can change the structure as well from a GL perspective. Now, there's a couple of other rights required for this as well. So if we just look at a user perspective and on a role, whichever role, I'm using that admin role. So on my GL side, there's a couple of new features that you can add or allow for particular users. So obviously not something we apply to all of our user base, but give them the ability to say, yep, we can actually update that financial account numbers, and we can also update that statistical account numbers. So those two available to then update as we go through. Now, the first part, as I mentioned, is if we just look at that company information and we look at the accounting. So if we allow that change, I can change that primary account number length as well. So that's one of the features. So if for whatever reason we chose 3 characters in your chart of accounts, you can change it to 4 if you run out of account numbers, and then go in and change the accounts as well. So that's part of the process. And what that looks like, if you want to start changing that, it's purely just on your general ledger account. You go into the account, we can do an edit in there, and you can see, because I've got the rights now, I can physically edit that account number. So if we change that first one, we can say, yep, let's change that to 11. We'll change that, and it'll physically just change the number for us. So there's no process to run or anything like that. It's an update. And you still have visibility. So based on our audit trail, you always have that, I've done it before. You can see that one's still writing the audit in there, but you can see the account number was changed from 11 to 10. And then once this is in, it'll show me from 10 to 11 as well. So you still have that audit trail to refer back to and have visibility of what it was before we started and what did we change it to as well afterwards. So quite a nice little key change. From our aging reports, so this is on accounts payable and accounts receivable, just some additional options when printing these type of reports. So firstly, if we look at AR, for instance, we can do it on both sides. If we look at that aging report, and customer selection options have been added. So the first one there, customer group. So you can now print this by customer group, which was previously not available. And the other option there is we can do this for multiple customers. So, initially you can just do it for a range of customers, but at this point you can then do select customers where you can say, you know what, I want to print it for a particular customer, and then a range of other customers in there as well. So I'll add those in there, and one more range, from that one till over there. So, you've got different ranges. If we save that, put a currency on there, we can run that report, and it will only bring through that select customers that we've got on that particular one. So within those ranges, those are the only customers that have transactions on that I can show on mine. So the easy way just to enhance the filtering options of the aging report for customers and suppliers on both sides. Now, when we step out of the sort of financial area, there's a couple of things on the inventory side that they've updated as well. So when we look at inventory, I think that's quite a key one that we sort of start adding in. And part of this is the entire fulfillment process. So there's a bit of things that we can add in there from a fulfillment side where we want to enable the fulfillment. We want to take it to pick, pack, ship, and invoicing effectively, so we can manage through multiple stages. And part of this, if we activate this, it'll give us those transactions that's applicable to each of those sections as well. So we can place orders, we can do the shipment, and we can do the fulfillment through the invoice afterwards. Now, in practice, what it means is when we go into inventory and we do our fulfillment, so there'll be a new invoice or fulfillment option within inventory. And again, when we activate that, we need to ensure that we apply that rights to particular users so they've got access to it. I'll open the fulfillment, and it will basically go through and give us everything that we've got from an order perspective. So you can see on this initial workbench, I've got a number of orders that's available. We can see there's on some of them more than one line, different warehouses where they are, and we can see some different statuses. Also from a fulfillment point of view, it tells you which ones we can fulfill and which ones not. And then there's some options that we can do. You can see we can assign it to someone, we can make it ready to pick, ready to pack, ready to ship, ready to invoice. We can put it on hold. So I've put 2 of them on hold, so we know those 2, because it's not fulfillable at this point, it's on hold. But for the others, I can physically go through and change the status. I can assign it to someone. You can see there it's assigned to Emma. And then for the ones that's ready to pick, so based on my filters, we can only work with the things that are fulfillable. At this stage, I can take those, I can assign it to someone and send it out for picking. So it just gives you that flexibility to say, you know what, for these particular orders, I want to assign these to whoever the picker is. And then once they're ready, we can make it ready to pick. Once they've picked it, we can make it ready to pack, and then obviously we can ship and invoice it as well. So it's just a workbench that encumbers all of that functions from an inventory perspective to enhance or assist you with that fulfillment process on the inventory side. So definitely check that one out if you work with inventory on your side as well. Now, sort of the last one that I just want to quickly touch on is just looking at our list views. Now, we have touched on this one initially, I think in the previous webinar as well, but there's been some additional enhancements there just to make things easier. So I'll cover off 1 or 2 things on that one before we move on. So looking at a customer or a supplier, both of them are basically active and got the same thing. So that's the normal list view. We've enabled that beta interface. So if I turn that on, you'll see the list will change a little bit. So it gives you a couple of options there. So, multiple filtering options, multiple sorting options. So I can say, you know what, I want to filter this list and say where, my customer type is one of, I'll select finance, and in this instance, must that one now, apply that and it'll resort or, filter the list. We can sort this by customer name in this instance, give you a list of customers going in. And then one of the other things that we will have available, just want to check my connection. Yep, there we go. There's the sorting. One of the other things that's been added, we now have the ability to bring in, I want to say that left list view. So you can now page through the customers and you don't have to go in and out of the screen to basically edit a customer or look something up on a customer. I can basically select from the left list and all the details will load on this side, and you can continue to either modify or check or report on those. So just a couple of things to enhance from that perspective, and you can always toggle that back to your normal filter list, and then again we can create new views, look at particular views from a system or a user perspective, and even revert changes, get it back to the standard that we had initially. So that was the initial part of or the highlights of the releases that we had from an Intacct perspective. I think at this stage, just to introduce Scott Bennett of Solver. So what Scott will do, he's one of our Solver partners working with Intacct, and he'll basically take us through that transformation, transform your business data visibility reporting and performance with Solver. So I'll hand that over to Scott at this point. Just give me a sec to change that to Scott, so he'll be able to take over the session and just share what he needs to share at this point.
So thank you, Hugo. Yes, so what is Solver? Solver is a cloud-based corporate performance management solution that connects with Sage Intacct, and they've actually boxed some out of the standard reports for Sage Intacct, and Scott is going to show us some of these features. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much, Desiree, and thank you, Hugo. Some great stuff happening there on the Sage Intacct front. And as Desiree pointed out, I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about Solver and how we can build on the already great functionality that is available within the Sage Intacct solution. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with our elite partner, FUJIFILM MicroChannel. Pleased to say that we've been working with the FUJIFILM MicroChannel team for over 10 years now. As I say, they are an elite partner of Solver, so it's always great to take the opportunity to talk to microchannel customers about what we're doing with Solver, and as I say, how we can enhance some of the functionality that you already have today. So in summary, what is Solver and why should you be interested? Well, Solver is as Desiree pointed out, it's a complete corporate performance management solution. So what does that mean? It basically means it is a full cloud solution designed to take care of any advanced financial and operational reporting requirements that you have above and beyond what you're getting today with Sage Intacct. It is a place to do all of your advanced planning, budgeting, forecasting, modeling, etc. And it also gives you a place to bring in any data sources that you may have across your organization that sit outside of Sage Intacct. So basically a comprehensive reporting and planning solution. Everybody on the call will be pleased to hear that it is a Sage Intacct marketplace solution. So if you go onto the Sage Intacct website, you'll see us featured there within the marketplace. And as part of that, we have a quick start connector into the Sage Intacct application. So that basically means we can very quickly connect Solver to your Sage Intacct environment and bring across any information that you may require for reporting and planning purposes. And the great thing is that we have hundreds of pre-built reports, budget and forecast templates and dashboards ready to go as part of our solution. Okay. Now, the purpose of today's sort of 20 odd minutes, I don't have a huge amount of time, so it's kind of, we'll look at this as a bit of a film trailer, if you like. And the main purpose really is to focus around elevating that reporting element. But as mentioned with Solver, you can do so many more things as well. And we're key to keeping things simple within the application, and that also translates to our licensing as well. So our licensing is all inclusive. So when you subscribe to Solver, it includes all functionality, whether that be reporting, planning, ability to connect to other data sources, etc. It's all included. Okay, but again, today we're going to talk mainly around some of those reporting elements. So as I mentioned, we've been working with our friends at MicroChannel for over 10 years. So during that time, we've obviously got a significant number of customers that are using the Solver application. I've just popped a slide up on the screen, and some of those names will hopefully be familiar to a lot of people on the call today. All these organizations are using Solver for a variety of different requirements, whether it be reporting, budgeting, or as I say, consolidating enterprise-wide data. Okay. So on that note, what I'm going to do, as I say, is just take a short amount of time to go through some aspects of the product. You'll notice now that I am already in the application. I mentioned earlier, Solver is a full cloud-based solution. It is hosted on Azure, and you can access it across any device or browser. And you'll notice within my application here, I have a variety of different options available to me. I have a full reporting section here with a number of different options. I have my planning section for my advanced budgeting and forecasting, what if analysis, etc. Not going to talk about that too much today, but if it is of interest to anyone on the call, I'm sure the team at MicroChannel would be happy to get into a little bit more detail around some of that functionality. And as an administrator, I also have access to, you know, my data, the way that my data warehouse is structured, etc. But what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to click here over in report templates, and you'll see that straight away I am greeted with a number of reports available to me within my environment. And I should point out that you can create any type of report within Solver. Assuming we have that data coming in, you can create any type of report, and that report can look and feel however you want. You're not limited in terms of the formatting and design of those reports. And the reason for that is that we use Excel as the design layer, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. But first of all, what I want to point out is you're looking at some of my reports here in this environment. But if anyone's interested at the closing of this webinar, if you go to our website, solverglobal.com, you can go down here to our template marketplace, and you'll notice here I've got Sage Intacct as my financial ERP system. And you can actually see all of the out-of-the-box marketplace reports that are available to Solver Sage Intacct users. Okay, so you can go through here and you can have a look and you can say, yeah, this looks great. This is the kind of report I'm looking for, right? You can open that up. It will tell you what the report is going to give you. You can have a closer look at that report to see how it's laid out, the formatting, etc. And you can then use that within your environment. And I should point out, you might look at that report and say, that's great, but it's 80% there. There's some other things that I want as part of that report, or I've got my own branding that I need to factor into these reports and layouts, no problem, right? You can go in there and you can tweak that report accordingly using our design tool. So all of that is potentially available to you as part of the Solver solution. And you'll notice here that every user within the organization is able to create their own categories and folders. So I've got one here I've called Scott's Reports. So here are a few of my favorite go-to reports that I'm typically using. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this profit and loss variance report. Okay, pretty straightforward report, pretty clean looking. It's giving me everything that I need. You'll notice that I'm taking advantage of some advanced grouping functionality down here, which you're able to build into your reports. Okay, what you'll also notice as well, I have the ability to sort of expand out here if I want to see my actuals by month and in comparison to my year-to-date budget. I can also set up any type of drill down within Solver reporting as well. So remember, all of the data is coming in from Sage Intacct into Solver for the reporting and planning purposes. So if I want to, I can, as a report consumer, I can look at this services revenue number, and I might want to look to see what sits behind that. So if I want to, I can drill all the way into the general ledger detail and see all of the transactions that make up that 540 number. That's just one example. You can set up any type of drill down. You'll also notice as well, I can collect comments. This is something that we hear a lot from organizations when they share reports. They may want to get commentary from department managers, program managers, depending on your type of business. And with Solver, when you share these reports, you can actually collate that commentary. So I could have a look at this report and I can put in there, hey, these are the reasons for the variance, you know, next one's going to be better, whatever it may be. And all of that information is stored securely back to the cloud data warehouse. The advantage being that at any time in the future, you can always go back to view those comments, you know, who said what and when they said it, all right? The other thing you'll notice is I can create any type of parameter or filter within my reports. So this report, I've run it for the US entities, but if I want, I can run it for Australia, Singapore, or multiple entities. It's entirely up to me. I can choose what financial period I want to run this report for. And importantly, if you're doing your planning in Solver as well, you can store unlimited versions of a budget or forecast. So what that means is you can then set up these predefined scenarios whereby you can run your P&L variance report against budget version 1, 2, 3, forecast ABC, worst case, realistic, best case. And then you can take that, and if you want, you can then do your modeling and what if analysis beyond that. Okay, so very, very flexible in that regard. But you can create as many filters and parameters as you like. It is entirely up to you. So you could have a cost center parameter, department, program. Everyone on the call will no doubt think of better examples for their businesses than I will, but you get the idea. You can create as many of those parameters as you wish. Now, if you can imagine these reports are being shared across the organization, there may come a time where somebody wants a change to a report, or you need to create a new report. So what we call power users within an organization have the ability to make those changes. And as I said, you can create any type of change, any type of report in this environment. So if somebody came to the finance team as an example and said, hey, this P&L is great, but I need additional information, or it doesn't look the way it should as part of our organization, branding requirements, etc. You can simply, or they can simply come in here and choose Edit in Report Designer. And what Solver's going to do, it's going to launch Excel for me. It'll kick the report design tool in, and you can see I now have that same report in its design form. Okay, so you can see it. You'll start to see how this report was built up. Now remember, all of the information that we have is coming in from Sage Intacct, and it's up to you what you bring in. You probably don't want to replicate the whole ERP, but there'll be certain elements that you'll want to bring in for reporting, potentially planning purposes. Obviously GL detail, maybe you want to bring in AP, AR, fixed assets, depending on your requirements. But what you'll see here, this is Excel. I have my design tool, but all of this down the left-hand side here, that's all my data, right? So if there's anyone on the call today that is still spending time exporting data out of your Intacct system or any other system and dumping that into Excel, manipulating it, preparing management report packs, board packs on a weekly, monthly basis, this is where you start to see the power of Solver working in conjunction with Intacct, because down here is all my data. So when this report was created, they went, okay, general ledger, okay, those are all sort of my dimensions as part of my general ledger. So I can take account, for instance, and I can drag account in to C13. And then maybe I want to use an attribute of that dimension. So I can take account description and I can drag that in, and that was dragged into D13. Okay. Maybe down here, I'm bringing in information from my CRM system. Maybe you have a separate CRM system, client management system that you use, or HR system. Right, so if I want to, I can, because all of that information is coming into Solver on an automated basis, I can then say, okay, I want to factor some HR information or some CRM information into this report. Okay, so you can start to see how this gets built up, and these things here, these are standard variance formulas. So I'm sure a lot of people on the call will be able to create these today. I mean, we often say with Solver, if you know Excel, you've got decent Excel skills, you're kind of 70% of the way there in terms of building your own reports within Solver. Okay, so but just remember, it's only designers within an organization that will ever interact with Excel. Most of the people within your organization will view those reports, analyze those reports via the web environment. So we kind of look at it as the best of both worlds. Okay, so you can start to see I've got a lot of other functions here, not too much time to get into a deep dive, but you'll see I've got predefined period functions and a lot of things that we put in here to make life easier as part of that design process. But you'll notice all the design and layout, it's all Excel, right? So if somebody came to us now wanting to change, in the interest of time, I'm going to do something super easy. Somebody said, yeah, this report's great, gives me everything, but the branding's off. No worries, all right? So let's say, yep, the branding's off. I'm going to get that changed for you. I'm going to put that right. All right, so I'm going to change it, no problem. As a sort of power user, I'm going to go into my Run tab, and you'll notice that it's remembered the parameters that we selected when we were in the web environment. I can run it now if I want. It's going to go out to that Solver Cloud Data Warehouse, and if there have been any updates, for instance, you may have set up your connector with Sage Intacct to update every 30 minutes, every hour. It's entirely up to you. So there may have been an update since we last run it. And you will see that I have all of that information available. I like the report. It's giving me everything I need. So at this point, all I need to do is go into the Design tab. I just hit Save, and straight away it tells me it's been uploaded, at which point I close Excel. And you'll see within that web environment, it has automatically detected the changes. I refresh, and then I rerun my report. And any of the changes that I made will come across straight away, which was, if you've been keeping tabs, you'll see was just a color change, just in the interest of time. So now I've got that report, and I must confess, I cheated a little bit there because I edited a live report. Now, in a real world environment, you probably wouldn't want to do that. So you could very easily just create a duplicate and make changes to the duplicate. Therefore, if you make any mistakes, you haven't messed up the live report. All right, but this is a demo environment, and I'm kind of saving myself a few minutes there in the interest of time. So now I can publish it. It's now a live report. And at this point, I say, great, I'm now going to share it with the team. I share it by role, or I share it by user. So I can just come in, yeah, share with Archie, share with Bud, share with Mike, share with AJ, etc. Now, all of those users will get a notification within Solver. They'll also get an email, and it'll say, Scott just shared this profit and loss report with you. Click the link. When they click the link, it will take them into the report. Now, this is, I think, a really key part of all of this, is that within Solver, you can get very granular with the security profiles of your users. So there's probably a lot of people on the call that are maybe having to go through that process of, completing or putting together Excel-based reports on a regular basis. And they're having to take that data, manipulate it, and potentially prepare a report for a different audience. You might have certain managers that are only supposed to see certain departments, certain numbers, certain reps that can only see certain regions, etc. So the power here is that you can set those security profiles up so you only have to create this report one time. So you have this report, I've shared it with multiple people, you could share it with 30 people. But each person is only going to see the information that they're supposed to see as part of that report. Each person is only going to be able to filter based on their security profile. So maybe someone gets this and they're only allowed to run it for the US and AU entity. Maybe they can only run it for the actual scenario, right? The idea is they've got this report now, they can come in at any time, they can run it based on any parameter subject to the security, they can drill down subject to the security again, and they've got that to use whenever they want and do their analysis, etc. All right, so do it one time, share it, your job is done. Now, that's just one way of doing it, but there are multiple ways. For instance, within your organization, you may want to take advantage of things like tree structures. So within Solver, you can create unlimited hierarchical tree structures within your reporting. This is just a simple example, but you'll notice I have a report here that I've run for my Australian entity. But if I want, I can set up these trees whereby I can run it for different entities, different line of businesses, or I could say, I want to see a consolidated view of the organization. I can run it. It'll go out if there's been any updates, great. And you'll see that this is a dynamically expanding report. So I can now see each individual entity, and I can see an aggregate total as well. And I can still drill down and all that good stuff. So there's many different ways in which you can do that, even to the point of embedding dashboards and things within your formatted financial and operational reporting. And if you do go to our website after this, I showed you a few examples, but there's hundreds on there, and you'll see a lot of them have embedded dashboards within those reports. So really cool, makes life easier, makes those reports much more visual. So I think everyone gets the idea that you can create any report and it can look and feel however you want. But some of the additional benefits here within Solver is you can do things like run a report and then store it within your archive. An archive, which every user will have, allows you to store executed versions of a report. Great, for instance, if you want to store a version pre and post financial close, or if you've got department managers that want to store an executed report at any point. So what that means is you can simply come in here and you can say, yep, I want to open up this report here, I want to open up this report, and I want to look at these two different reports, I want to see them side by side. Okay, but you'll notice in this scenario, I cannot change any parameters because these are a snapshot in time, right? So this was run for this entity, this period, this scenario. Okay, but if you want, you can come in here and open as many reports as you want for comparison purposes. All right. What you can also do is you can use our publisher module to come in here and say, yep, this is our monthly management report pack, right? You know, reports for execs, whatever it may be. And you can determine what reports you want to put on this job. So you would come down here, these would be all of your reports. Okay, and you could come down here, you can pop your reports in. All right, you could choose who's going to receive it. You can do it by user, by role, same as before. You can determine how you want these reports delivered. So for instance, you can have them delivered as an static Excel spreadsheet. The great thing is the security profiles are still intact. So therefore, when you share it and they get it via email, they're only going to see the information they're supposed to. All right, you can send it via PDF, or probably the optimal way of doing it is to have it delivered to a user's archive. So they'll get a notification and they get to go into their Solver archive to see those reports and maintain them. And then you could just say, great, I want it to go every month on the last day of this time. You know that at that time, every month, the report or report pack is going to be available. No one's going to have to wait for it to run, because we use a true data warehouse, a pre-built data warehouse within Solver. You're not having to wait for cubes and things to run overnight or none of that sort of stuff. The report's there, it's ready to go. So if you were to do this with a management pack as an example, that is delivered. And that means that, for instance, you can, your execs can come in and say, great, I'm going to open up my briefing pack, my management pack. And this is a simple one, just to demonstrate the capability. But the team at FUJIFILM MicroChannel will tell you some of our customers have done some really cool things and really gone to town with their report packs within Solver, table of contents, logos, and all that sort of nice stuff. But what you'll see here is I have my briefing book, which has been delivered. It's also giving me an auto narrative. So if you are preparing those reports every month and you are having to sort of transpose data and put a whole narrative around where we're at, where you're at, you can use this auto narrative capability within Solver. So you'll see, for instance, that it's telling me profitability was great. This was our income compared to the same month last year. This is our best-selling product or best customer. This was the largest payment we received. And it's up to you to define that narrative. And then you go ahead and just build drivers into your report so that whenever that report is run, it takes your narrative and subject to the numbers, it changes accordingly, so that you know when the pack is delivered that you know, they're going to get the right context around the numbers for the month, as an example. And then, of course, you can include all of the supporting material in here. For instance, I've got my P&L, I've got some dashboards, I've got sales information, payments. You can put in whatever you want, some directions on how to use a report. And one of the cool things about this, and again, it's if you want to give people access to do this, is they can still drill down on any numbers within that management report pack. All right, so if you want to give them that functionality, you can do. All right, so lots of things that you can do there in terms of creating board packs or even just individual reports and having them delivered on a regular basis. It's entirely up to you how you do it. But the last thing that I'll just touch on, and I'll say again, you can do so much with this product. I don't want to shortchange anyone on the call, and if you are interested, I would recommend you reach out to the FUJIFILM MicroChannel team, talk to your account managers for a bit more of a in-depth look at the Solver application and what you can do around a reporting and planning perspective. But there's one more thing that I just want to show you, which I think hopefully a lot of people on the call will appreciate, and that is our ad hoc reporting tool. So we've been talking mainly around formatted financial and operational reporting. We've been talking around scheduling the delivery of reports. We've been talking about creating management report packs, board packs, etc. How about ad hoc reporting? Well, whilst everyone within an organization will hopefully have access to the reports that they need, there may come a time where they have a query which is not answered within the reports that have been provided by the finance team. And this goes along with that narrative that Solver is, of course, designed to be a self-service solution. You don't want to have to be calling up the FUJIFILM MicroChannel team, Solver team, every time you want to change to a report if someone has a separate query. So every user within the organization, subject to security, can come in here and run their own queries. So for instance, I could come in here and say, I've got this query around revenues. I'm going to close this filter. So I want to query my revenues data I want to have a look at account. I want to look at account description. I want to look at extended price, refresh. Okay, now I get this information and I can play around with that if I want to. But I'm looking at that now and I can see my accounts and I can see the numbers, but I might want to enable pivot mode here. And I'm going to add entity into the mix and I'm going to refresh. Great. So now I've got all those individual entities. Maybe I want to move this around a little bit. I'm not happy with the layout. Okay. So you can see I'm starting to build up my query and I can build in as many filters as I want as part of this. I can filter it by account, entity, period, lots of different things. But now I might want to just go, great. Now I want to generate a chart off the back of this. So now suddenly, as just a user within, this is not something that that only finance can do. This could be anyone. This could be salespeople, as I say, department managers, program managers, could be anybody. Everyone would get access to this. So now I've got this this graph. Maybe I don't like this graph, right? Maybe I want to just change it, right? It's up to me. I can change whatever style I want. And I can keep building it out, adding things to it. And what I can then do is I can save this, because I might want to run this query again. So I save it again, which means next time around, I can just come in and run it, filter it, do what I need to do. But it may get to the point where people in your organization are all running the same query. Now, at that point, that tells you that there is probably some value in creating an actual formatted report, a formal report, to share with the whole team, because it's clearly of interest. So at this point, what Solver allows you to do is use this query as the basis for a formatted report. So I can export this to Excel. It'll take it all across to Excel for me, so it's almost ready to go. And then also I might want to do is add the logo in there and maybe change the layout a little bit. And then I can publish that as a formatted report and share it like we did with the whole team. Okay, so that's just one area. There's lots of other things I could show you today around our process manager, whereby you can define your monthly reporting process, assign things to different people, assign documentation to people that perhaps they need to review as part of the monthly reporting process. Set up your planning, define your budgeting and forecasting process within Solver, with things like review and approval processes and automatic consolidation of budget and forecasts, lots and lots of stuff. But today I just wanted to take a little bit of your time to talk, I guess, in summary about the easy connection with Sage Intacct and how we can very quickly bring your information from Intacct into Solver on an automated basis so that you don't have to worry about exporting data. How you can create any type of report, management pack, board pack, ad hoc queries, all that kind of stuff within Solver. And don't forget, anything outside of Sage Intacct can be brought in here as well. So CRM, HR, whatever system that you may be using across your enterprise.